Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're looking up, but maybe also looking in the mirror.
That's a good way to put it.
Our mission is to really get into the source material on this interstellar object, 3i et al. We're working mainly from this summary essay, A Call for Cosmic Modesty.
Right.
And unpacking this, well, pretty wild argument that this object basically proves humanity is kind of a latecomer, maybe even minor player on the whole galactic stage.
And the sources are pretty clear. If this thing, this ATLS object, turns out to be actual technology, it's not just interesting science. It forces a complete rethink.
A rethink of everything, science funding, global priorities, the works.
Pretty much. It moves way beyond just astronomy news. It becomes this huge political, even philosophical challenge.
Okay, let's ground this first. Scale. We've had interstellar visitors before, right? Everyone remembers Oumuamua.
Yeah, that little cigar-shaped thing.
Right. But 3i et al. Found July 1st, 2025. This is just a different beast entirely. We're talking 5 kilometers across. Minimum.
5 kilometers. It's hard to even picture.
Think Manhattan Island, that kind of size.
Yeah.
Which makes it, what, 1,000,000 times more massive than Oumuamua. At least.
At least. And, you know, just finding anything that big coming from interstellar space, that alone is statistically mind-boggling. These things should be incredibly rare.
So the size itself is an anomaly.
It's a huge one, but it's really just the starting point. It's the behavior, the specifics of what it's doing that leads researchers like Avi Loeb to say, hang on, this might not just be a random rock.
Okay, so let's dig into that. Forget the size for a second. What's so weird about its path? Why does it look less like it drifted here and more like it was aimed?
Well, if you look at the bigger picture, there are just too many things about its trajectory that seem non-random. You'd expect a natural object, right, tumbling through space to come in at some random angle to the plane of our planet.
Ecliptic, yeah.
Exactly. But 3i Atlas, it's flying almost perfectly aligned with that plane. The odds of that happening by chance are maybe, what, 1 in 500?
Huh. Like throwing a dart across a room and having it land perfectly flat on the floor instead of sticking in the wall.
Kind of like that, yeah. And then there's its direction. It's on a retrograde trajectory.
Meaning it's going against the flow.
Yeah.
Opposite to how the planets orbit.
Precisely. And Loeb points out that's actually the ideal path if you were, say, an advanced craft wanting to drop off little probes into different planetary systems as you pass through. You wouldn't get easily captured by the sun's gravity that way.
Okay, that's clever. And the timing. Its closest pass to the sun, perihelion, was October 29th. And it did that while it was behind the sun, from our point of view.
Right, hidden.
Is the idea that it chose to be hidden, to do something complex without us watching.
Well, it's certainly the perfect spot if you wanted to execute a tricky maneuver, like a big gravity assist, or maybe something even more complicated like deceleration, without being easily observed.
Makes sense.
And then look at its path. It came really close to Mars already, and it's heading for a very close pass by Jupiter in March 2026. All these near misses. It starts to look less like random stumbling and more like fine-tuning its arrival, as the source puts it.
Fine-tuning, okay.
Yeah.
But for me, the thing that really jumps out in the sources is the chemistry. You can maybe explain away weird orbits with exotic physics, I guess, but what they found in its gas plume.
Yes, the composition. That's where any comparison to a normal comet just completely falls apart.
What did they find?
They did spectral analysis looking at the light from the gas and found a really high amount of nickel, but crucially, almost no iron.
Nickel without iron. That's unusual.
Extremely. Think about what comets or asteroids are made of: ice, rock, dust, trace metals, sure. But this nickel to iron ratio, it looks a lot like the kind of industrial alloys we use, especially in aerospace. High-tech stuff.
So not granite, more like stainless steel.
That's a good analogy. It's just not a signature you expect from a natural object from our solar system, let alone an interstellar one.
And even before it started shedding gas, there were weird visual things, weren't there? Like a glow.
Yes. Early on, it had this strange glow, kind of like a jet, but it was pointed towards the sun, an anti-tail.
Towards the sun. But shouldn't solar radiation push stuff away? That's how comet tails work, right?
Exactly. It's completely backwards. It behaved like something maybe pushing back or being actively controlled somehow. And then that glow changed direction later on in September. Very puzzling.
Which brings us to maybe the wildest idea in the source material. What happened during that close pass behind the sun? Energy harvesting.
The CMEs, yeah, the coronal mass ejections.
Right, big solar flares.
It's just a remarkable coincidence, isn't it? Multiple big CMEs erupting from the sun right around the time 3i Atlas was hidden back there. October 21st, 23rd, 25th, 26th.
So the speculation is it was maybe using them.
It raises the question, yeah, what if a technology that advanced could actually capture the energy from a CME?
Wait, the source mentioned something like 45 Hiroshima bombs worth of energy from just one event.
Hmm?
Could a craft actually absorb that? Is there any evidence for that?
Okay, to be clear, that part is purely theoretical speculation based on the physics. There's no direct observation of energy absorption. But the sheer amount of energy in a large CME is enormous.
Right.
So theoretically, if you had, say, a massive magnetic scoop or something, maybe you could harness that kind of power, perhaps for a huge deceleration burn or a course change. The point isn't whether these specific CMEs were used, but the mind-bending possibility of tech that treats solar flares like, cosmic gas stations.
Wow. Okay. So we've got the size, the weird trajectory, the industrial-like chemistry, the CME coincidence. The data pointing towards something extraordinary is definitely piling up.
It seems hard to ignore.
And yet,
Yeah.
the official reaction, or at least from big parts of the scientific establishment, seem to be kind of dismissive, which leads us straight to Avi Loeb and his black swan idea.
Right. Loeb uses that metaphor really effectively. A black swan event. Low probability, maybe? But if it happens, the consequences are absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Game-changing.
And he connects it to Pascal's wager.
Sort of, yeah. He simplifies it for this situation.
Right.
Look, if we investigate 3A Atlas, assuming it's just a rock, and we're right, okay, we learned a bit more about space rocks. Fine.
Limited upside.
Limited upside. But if we investigate it seriously, considering it could be advanced technology, and we turn out to be right, the payoff is immense. Existential knowledge, it would immediately change everything, global policy, markets, our whole understanding of our place, The risk of not looking properly is just too great.
So why the resistance then? If the stakes are that high, why isn't everyone jumping on this? You mentioned the academic mainstream is pushing back.
Loeb is pretty blunt about it in the sources. He calls it a mud wrestler culture.
Mud wrestling?
Yeah, meaning driven by intellectual arrogance, maybe jealousy, and a deep fear of stepping off the established path, the path that leads to funding, to tenure. It's easier, safer to mock something extraordinary than to risk your career questioning the foundations. It's a kind of psychological defense mechanism.
We've seen this before in science, haven't we? This institutional inertia.
Oh, absolutely. History is full of it. The source mentions the classic example, the Church versus Galileo. It took them, 350 years to finally admit they were wrong.
Wow.
And we saw a smaller version just recently with Oumuamua. Remember how it accelerated in a way gravity couldn't explain?
Yeah, the non-gravitational acceleration. Big mystery.
Right. And the mainstream explanation that settled was a dark comet, outgassing in a way we couldn't see. Loeb's famous critique was that that was like calling an elephant a zebra without stripes. You're basically defining away the most interesting anomalous part.
So ignoring the key evidence to fit the existing model, it sounds like ego getting in the way.
It often is. But the most, frustrating example of this whole problem, what Loeb calls terrestrial stupidity, is about the best picture we might have of 3A Atlas.
The NASA image.
Exactly. NASA's HiRISE camera, the really sharp one orbiting Mars, took a picture of 3A Atlas back on October 2nd, 2025, when it was nearby. Potentially our best, clearest look at it.
And Nuteno.
Nope, it's being withheld. Not for national security, not because it shows something definitive, but because of bureaucracy.
You're kidding.
I wish I were. The image was taken literally one day after a U.S. government shutdown started, so technically there wasn't funding allocated to pay the staff to process and release the data.
So a budget dispute is preventing the entire world from seeing potentially the most important astronomical image ever taken.
That's the absurd reality. It perfectly illustrates how our own internal squabbles, our politics, our funding issues, they're literally blinding us. We can't even look properly at what's right there in our cosmic backyard. It's maddening.
Utterly galling is the word. Okay, let's widen the lens a bit. If 3IATEL is technology, the sources ask, is this the first time? Is there a history here?
That's where Dr. Villarreal's research comes in. It's fascinating stuff. She went back to old photographic plates from the Mount Palomar Observatory in the 1950s.
Glass plates, wow.
Yeah, old school. And she found these things called transients, basically. Points of light that appear suddenly in one photo and are gone in the next.
Okay. Could be anything, right? Asteroids, defects.
Could be. But she found a statistically significant link between these transients appearing and two other things. UAP reports UFO sightings and, get this, U.S. nuclear weapons testing.
Wait, more transients appeared after nuclear test.
She found a 68% higher chance of seeing these vanishing objects on plates taken shortly after a nuclear test.
Whoa. That suggests maybe someone or something took notice when we developed nuclear weapons, like we suddenly got interesting or dangerous.
That's certainly the implication. We crossed some kind of technological threshold. And she found one particularly amazing case from 1952, a cluster of 3 transients appearing together.
3 at once.
3 at once. And crucially, their position was aligned not just with the solar system's plane, the ecliptic, but also with the plane of the Milky Way galaxy. The odds of that alignment happening randomly, about 1 in 10,000.
That's highly unlikely to be random. So what do the sources speculate that might have been?
The hypothesis put forward is that this 1952 triple transient could have been the deceleration burn, the braking flash of a large mothership arriving in Earth orbit.
And the timing.
Just 24 hours before those huge, very famous mass UFO sightings over Washington, D.C. in July 1952.
Wow. Okay. So the idea is maybe these carefully planned arrivals aren't new at all.
The patterns might go back much further than we think, which brings us back to 3I Atlas. If it is technological and it's on this fine-tuned trajectory, where's it going? The sources talk about a potential solar system checkmate.
Meaning a strategic goal?
Exactly. And the most logical target, based on resources and strategy, isn't Earth. It's Jupiter. Specifically, Jupiter's big Galilean moons. Ganymede, Europa, Callisto.
Why Jupiter?
Think about it. Huge amounts of water ice, which is potential fuel. Low gravity on the moons, making launches easy. Plus, you're right next door to the asteroid belt for mining raw materials.
Then you're further out, away from the inner planets. Less interference?
Precisely. It's the perfect place to set up a long-term, uncontested base if you're an interstellar power looking to establish a foothold, resource-rich and strategically sound.
Okay, this is where it gets really profound. This is the cosmic modesty part. If we even entertain this possibility that we're not alone, maybe not even the most advanced players in our own system, what does that demand of us? How do we have to change?
Well, Loeb's argument, reflected in the sources, is pretty radical. He says we need a massive shift in global priorities. Right now, the world spends something like $2.4 trillion a year on military budgets.
Trillion,
Yeah.
with a T.
Yeah. He argues we should take a significant chunk of this, that he throws out the figure of maybe $1 trillion a year, and redirect it.
Towards what?
Towards space. Seriously funding interstellar exploration, building space habitats, maybe what he calls a Noah's spaceship, something to ensure humanity's long-term survival beyond Earth.
He thinks spending $1 trillion a year could actually build off-world habitats within a century.
That's the kind of scale he's
Sure.
talking about, yes. And he sees the potential arrival of, as he puts it, a smarter kid on the block, not primarily as a threat, but maybe as the shock we need.
A shock to unify us, to stop fighting amongst ourselves.
Exactly. It could force us to finally divert all that energy and resources away from our terrestrial conflicts and towards shared, outward-looking interstellar aspirations. It's like the ultimate evolutionary nudge.
This really elevates the whole thing beyond just finding an object, doesn't it? Which leads to that synthesized dialogue in the source material, bringing Loeb together with the thinking of physicist Wolfgang Pauli and psychologist Carl Jung.
Yeah, that's a really powerful section. It frames the whole issue on a much deeper level. You have Loeb, the practical scientist, saying, look, we need to prepare, gather data on this potentially dangerous technological visitor. Urgency.
Right. Then Pauli.
Pauli, the physicist famous for his work on quantum mechanics and consciousness, saw things like 3I8LS, these extreme anomalies, as moments where the physical world basically refuses to fit our neat theories. The ghosts in our cosmology, he called them. Events that force physics itself to grow.
And Jung, the psychologist.
Jung framed this potential encounter as forcing nothing less than a second Copernican revolution.
Second.
Yeah, Copernicus knocked Earth out of the center of the universe physically. This second revolution, Jung suggests, knocks humanity out of the center of importance psychologically. It challenges our assumed uniqueness.
And the resistance, the denial, the mud wrestling, Jung saw that as just immaturity.
Pretty much. Symptoms of our collective psychological immaturity when we're faced with something truly unknown, something archetypal. We ridicule what we fear, especially the fear that maybe we're not that special after all.
It forces us into that cosmic modesty.
Exactly. That's the core message from all 3 perspectives synthesized there. The biggest danger isn't necessarily the visitor itself, whatever it is. It's our own institutional blindness, our failure to recognize the pattern, to look up, learn, and adapt.
So where does this leave you listening to this? The sources lay out this incredible contrast, don't they? On one hand, You have these stunning anomalies of 3I Atlas, the
Yeah.
impossible size, the weird chemistry, the trajectory that looks
It's
designed.
just compelling data points, one after another.
And on the other hand, institutional foot-dragging, bureaucratic inertia, maybe even intellectual arrogance, actively preventing us from getting the best data like the withheld high-rise image. The call to action seems clear. We need to demand rigor, support the projects actually trying to collect unbiased data, like Loeb's Galileo project, and consciously try to shed this ingrained illusion of uniqueness.
And that maybe leads to one final thought to chew on, really pulling from that Jungian angle about humility. What if the visitor, the alien, isn't entirely separate? What if its appearance, this anomaly crashing into our reality, is exactly the jolt needed to awaken something dormant in us, our own collective potential? So the question maybe isn't just what is it, but what does its presence ask of us? If this visitor isn't fundamentally disconnected from humanity's own next step, what assumptions do we hold about our own superiority, our isolation, our specialness that we absolutely must let go of to truly understand the message?